Mr. President, in recent months, we have been witnessing the formation of two opposing sides that I would call biblical, the children of light and the children of darkness. The children of light constitute the most conspicuous part of humanity, while the children of darkness represent an absolute minority. And yet the former are the object of a sort of discrimination, which places them in a situation of moral inferiority with respect to their adversaries, who often hold strategic positions in government, in politics, in the economy, and in the media. In an apparently inexplicable way, the good are being held hostage by the wicked and by those who help from either out of self-interest or fearfulness. These two sides, which have a biblical nature, follow the clear separation between the offspring of the woman and the offspring of the serpent. Here, Vigano refers to Genesis 3:15, where after original sin, God says he will place enmity between the woman and the serpent, between her seed and between his seed. This is the great division of the elect and the reprobate, the saints and the unrepentant sinners. Continuing Vigano, quote, on the one hand, there are those who, although they have 1,000 defects and weaknesses, are motivated by the desire to do good, to be honest, to raise a family, to engage in work, to give prosperity to their homeland, to help the needy, and, in obedience to the law of God, to merit the kingdom of heaven. On the other hand, there are those who serve themselves, who do not hold any moral principles, who want to demolish the family and the nation, exploit workers to make themselves unduly wealthy, foment internal divisions and wars, and accumulate power and money. For them, the fallacious illusion of temporal well-being will one day, if they do not repent, yield to the terrible fate that awaits them far from God in eternal damnation, end quote. Boom. Vigano, he's just talking about eternal damnation with the president. He's not afraid. Look, and we know Trump's a rich guy. He's made himself wealthy. And look, this is a warning to all of us. I mean, if you live in America, you're wealthy. If we focus on the wealth, we will, without care of neighbor, without trying to be honest, without trying to do the good, we will end up in what he calls the terrible fate, eternal damnation. There is no Balthazarian, dare we hope that all men be saved. None of that. Bishop Barron, this is the privileged way. We can hope for all to be saved. No, that's not how the Bible talks. That's not how Christ speaks. It's not how Paul speaks. If you read the book of the Apocalypse, Revelation, there's people in hell. He goes on to say, in society, Mr. President, these two opposing realities coexist as eternal enemies, just as God and Satan are eternal enemies. And it appears that the children of darkness, whom we may easily identify with the deep state, which you wisely oppose and which is fiercely waging war against you in these days, have decided to show their cards, so to speak, by now revealing their plans. They seem to be so certain of already having everything under control that they have laid aside that circumspection that until now had at least partially concealed their true intentions. The investigations already underway will reveal the true responsibility of those who manage the COVID emergency, not only in the area of healthcare, but also in politics, the economy, and the media. We will probably find that this colossal operation of social engineering, in this colossal operation of social engineering, there are people who have decided the fate of humanity, arrogating to themselves the right to act against the will of citizens and their representatives and the governments of nations. Okay, y'all, this is the juicy paragraph where he refers covertly, kind of in a subtle way, to the tattooed forearms of Baphomet. Real quick, look at the forearms of Baphomet right here. On his right hand is Salve, and on his left hand is Coagula. All right, and that's going to be the reference here that Vigano makes with Trump. And I hope Trump got the reference. And Trump, if you didn't get the reference, watch this video. Someone send this to people in Trump's circle. Trump needs to understand what Vigano is trying to say right here. All right, here's the paragraph. We will also discover that the riots in these days were provoked by those who, seeing that the virus is inevitably fading and that the social alarm of the pandemic is waning, necessarily have had to provoke civil disturbances because they would be followed by repression, which, although legitimate, could be condemned as an unjustified aggression against the population. The same thing is also happening in Europe, in perfect synchrony. This is quite clear that the use of street protests is instrumental in the purposes of those who would like to see someone elected to the upcoming presidential elections who embodies the goals of the deep state and who expresses those goals faithfully and with conviction. It will not be surprising if, listen everyone, it will not be surprising if in a few months we learn once again that hidden behind these acts of vandalism and violence, there are those who hope to profit from the dissolution of the social order so as to build a world without freedom. Salve et coagula, as the Masonic adage teaches. And in my book, Infiltration, in the very beginning, I explain how the infiltration of the church, and it applies to the state as well, goes back to the secret societies, which are based on the lie of alchemy. Alchemy is a school of philosophy that uses as its primary allegory turning base metals like lead into gold. There's the philosopher's stone, and there's all these formulas, really spells, incantations, that ultimately help the philosopher, which is interesting, right? It's not necessarily just a scientist. This is the philosopher, so it's all mystical, to turn lead or base metal into gold. And in Infiltration, in the book, I explain how ultimately this is an attempt. It's the satanic lie that Satan tried, where he said, I will be a god unto myself. That's what Satan said. And Michael, the archangel Michael, I have a whole video on this on the channel, said, Mikael. Mikael, that's Hebrew. Me, who? Ka is like. El, God. Mikael, who is like God? It's a question. So this one angel said to Satan, Mikael, who is like God? You say you're God, but who is like God? There's only one true God. And it was that question of Michael, St. Michael the angel, that caused Satan to fall, and a third of the angels with him that rebelled against God, because they wanted to take their angelic nature, which is lower, and in a way turn it into gold, turn it into God. Not with God's grace, not with God's mercy, not with God's love, but by their own self-power, their own mysticism, their own philosophies, their own lies. And so when Satan falls and he comes to earth and God creates man and woman, Satan does the same alchemy lie to the man and the woman. You will be like gods. You don't need God's grace, God's love, God's mercy, because we do believe as Christians that God's grace elevates us and makes us sons of God. Ultimately, it will elevate us into the beatific vision, where we will be united to God's essence, partakers of the divine nature, as St. Peter says. So we do believe all that, but it's by humility and grace and love. This is by pride and hatred and lies and really self-love. So the lie of alchemy is that you can, without God, with magic and mysticism and philosophy, turn human nature into the divine. And that the motto of alchemy is Salve et Coagula. So it's not just about deifying human nature through lies and magic and deceit. It's also about transforming society. Take the church, dissolve it, salve, that's on the one arm that's pointing up on Baphomet. Dissolve the church and then bring it back together and congeal it into something different. Whereas we believe that the Bible was given by the apostles, it can never be changed. Tradition was given to us by the apostles, it can never be changed. Christ gave us the church through the apostles, it can never be changed. The doctrine and the morals can never be changed, modified, updated, edited. It's like the 10 Commandments. It's not the 10 suggestions. You have to follow the 10 Commandments. And I think it's very interesting that Archbishop Vigano is basically saying to Trump, hey, Baphomet, this Freemasonic sabbatic goat god, is ultimately the one that's behind all the pandemic, all the social media hype, and all these riots. These riots are dissolving our society. It's class warfare, it's race warfare, it's everything that Karl Marx taught. And if you are a follower and disciple of Jesus Christ, you are not going to like what they are creating.